Hi poets and writers, I'm Kay Spivey. Welcome to another video. Today I want to get into 7 things to keep in mind when you're critiquing another person's work. Now this can be for any type of work. I have the most experience in critiquing poetry and short stories because these are things that I did in college. However, you can apply this to helping people with their essays, to helping people with novels, and whatever they need critiques for. This is not advice for editing. This is not advice for like self-editing or self-revision or anything. This is specifically if you are giving critiques for somebody else's work. Number 1. You are not a mind reader. You need to read all the way to the end of a piece before commenting. Now, why is this important? You don't know if the questions that you are springing to mind are going to be answered soon. For example, if someone says something a little bit mysterious or confusing, but then answers it again 3 paragraphs later, it could be just good foreshadowing. It could be something that just isn't important quite yet, even though it sprang up in your mind and they realized that and answered it later. And it isn't helpful for you to be like, what are you talking about, when it gets answered later. And unless you're gonna go back through and delete those kind of comments, it's really not helpful for you to make those comments while you're reading it through the first time. Assume that the person has written this story with everything in mind that you're coming up with and read all the way to the end, or read the poem all the way to the end. You don't know if there's going to be some kind of a twist. You don't know if things are going to pull together. You've never approached this story before. And this is true even if this is something where you have read the story before but the person has done heavy revisions. Assume that the person is giving you finished work and finish reading it before you go back and are like, hey, I have questions about this isn't working. Never start your comments on your first read through. It is not going to be helpful. You do not know what's going to happen, and assuming that you do is going to leave a whole lot of useless comments on the manuscript. Number 2, this is a person whose work you're looking at. Be kind. This means not being like, this is stupid, or like, you're a bad writer. Everyone has had the experience of someone just saying the nastiest shit to them, completely uncalled for, being like, this is really amateurish. Ooh, this reads like a first draft. Things that you're just like, okay, but it's not even helpful. The comments you're making not only aren't helpful, but they're also mean. Like, even if something reads like a first grader wrote it with a crayon on the driveway, even then, read it as though you are reading the work of another peer of yours. Even if you can take pretty harsh criticism, still think about this as a person who has feelings, and be sure to soften your blows. This can be something as simple as just pointing out the few places that you like something, like, this was a great word choice, this sentence is beautiful, this is an interesting twist. Pointing out more things that you liked is actually helpful, and really, in terms of revision, pointing out things that are working for you and that you like is equally helpful as the things that aren't working and you didn't like, because when a person is thinking about, oh, what needs to change, a part that someone was like, this is amazing, is going to be one that they're like, okay, maybe I can rework the pieces around this rather than taking that part out. Like, it is equally helpful. So try to keep in mind, this is a person, they've got feelings. Try to soften your blows if you have to land a blow, but also just comments like, this is amateurish. You sound like an amateur. You sound like someone who's never critiqued work before. You sound like someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Be kind and approach things in a manner which you would want to then receive. Always fall back on the golden rule and do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And this is true even if you think, oh, I can take pretty harsh criticism. If you would be in a rage after reading something, don't send that to someone else. Number 3. This person has trusted you with their work. Be honest. Just saying, oh, I liked it, it was good, isn't helpful if there were parts you had a problem with. And if you loved the entire thing, maybe you aren't the right critique partner for them, and you can say, hey, I don't really know what needs fixing, I loved everything. But if there are parts that aren't working, or parts that tripped you up, or parts that were just totally coming out of nowhere, make sure that you say that. Holding back and not saying the things that are bothering you for fear of hurting someone's feelings is also not helpful. You can soften your blows. You can be like, hey, something isn't working here. I don't know what you were going for at this part. I'm a little confused here, but not saying anything, especially in places where you really were confused or it really was not working for you, is not helpful at all. This person trusted you as a fellow peer, as a fellow writer, to say, hey, these are the parts that aren't working, so they can go back and fix those before they try to send them off to an audience in a published form. Be honest with them. Tell them when something isn't working for you so that they can look critically at those parts and try to fix them later. Number 4 is be specific, but be open. Now, what do I mean by that? When you give criticism, sometimes this isn't working is a valid thing to say if you're just like, oh, I cannot wrap my head around what the problem is here. However, if you can say the problem is in this sentence and something is wrong in this sentence and I don't know what it is, that is way more helpful than being like, something's wrong in your manuscript, which is fully unhelpful. Just being like, hey, the entire poem doesn't work. I don't know. I don't get it. It's stupid. Is not helpful at all. But being like, hey, in the 3rd stanza, the 3rd line doesn't make sense to me. It's not working and I don't know what you could change or do, that is helpful. And sometimes being like, hey, this could work without that line entirely, or maybe if you changed it this way. Specific changes are very helpful. Offering a few suggestions is very helpful. If you're like, hey, maybe this word or maybe this one is closer to what you were going for, but I know the word that you used right here is just not quite what you seem to be going for. Offering some examples is extremely helpful. But don't just be like, this is incorrect, it needs to be this, because you don't know. Once again, you're not a mind reader. You don't actually know what they were going for. You can feel that, hey, this is not working with whatever else you've got going on. This doesn't seem to be correct. But you don't know the actual change that needs to happen. So don't just be like, this is the change you need to make. Offer suggestions. Don't just be like, oh, I'm going to change this the way I like it, because you are not the writer. Number 5, this is a little bit more broad. I feel that there are basically 3 types of comments that are helpful. These are very broad, but always try to fall back on these 3 broad types of comments when you are like beta reading or critiquing, especially a first draft or a first time someone has sent this kind of work out for other people to look at. And those types of comments are, I loved it, where you point out specific pieces and you're like, this is gold, you're a genius, I laughed so hard, this was beautifully written, this is my favorite part. Best kind of comment to receive. It always makes people feel floaty and happy, and again, it can help to soften blows later. The second one is WTF, where you're just like, I am so confused, I don't know what you're going for. This is completely, like, it's not working for me. Pointing out those specific moments where your brain goes WTF, those are extremely helpful. Anytime you're like, this is what you need to focus on over here, super helpful comments. And again, as specific as you can be about why it's not working, the more that they then have to go off of when they're going back to revise. And then the third kind is an overview. If you can give a person your overall take on the entire work, and this is going to be a lot easier with some types of work. Like with a poem, giving someone then your overall thoughts and opinions, your overall feeling. If you get to the end of the story and you're like, this was my overall impression of the entire work, especially with a short story, being like, this is the themes that I thought of. These were the moments that really captured me and stuck with me at the end. This was what I thought you were trying to go for. This is what I thought it was about. And even with a novel, like, this is the impression I was left with at the end of it, giving the overall view, so that if your overall view is way off base, they know something got messed up along the way. Always think about critique in terms of those kinds of questions, because they give someone a really good basis for what to go back to. Now remember, this is a work, if you are being asked to give a critique of it, that is not going to stay the same. This work is about to get changed. It's about to get revised. Once your comments are back, the person is going to start thinking about changing it. These types of places where you're just helping them hone in on what to look for during their revision process are extremely helpful. Number 6 kind of ties in with why those are more helpful comments than, say, marking up the page. And that's because you're not an editor. Not only, well, you might be if you are a professional editor, but you're giving a critique, just be aware that critiquing and editing are completely different things. You're wearing a different hat. If someone is asking for a full edit from an editor, that is a different type of markup. Again, like I said for the previous question, this work is going to change. This is not in any way the final version. This is not maybe the final structure. Putting things in like different punctuation isn't really helpful. You can point those things out if it's something that you enjoy doing, especially if it's something that it just bothers you and you just want to write things in as you go. Or if you happen to be critiquing like for a second time or something, so you think this work is closer to moving on towards an editing stage, you can put those things in, but that is not what you're here for. And know that a lot of those markups that you're doing are going to be irrelevant anyway. So keep in mind, you are not editing a work. If the bulk of your critique is putting in markups, you're actually not helping at all. Number 7, very important, you are here to help. This person has asked you to help them. Whatever you say, whatever you do, you're supposed to be a support for this person. You're supposed to be helping this limping story or poem or novel to reach its full potential, and you're trying to help this other writer to get it there. Now you can think of this as you're not getting paid, so like this does not need to be your priority. If you've got kids and a job, you do not need to get this back to them the same night. That is also true. But at the same time, this person trusts you and has asked you for help and you've said okay. So getting it back to them in a timely manner, giving a full critique, a full thoughtful critique, and taking your time on it to fully understand the piece, read it at least twice, give back something thoughtful and helpful because that is what they want. They asked you for help, and if you're just skimming over something in 24 hours and being like, it reads like it's amateurish, you're not helping at all. You're just being a really bad critique partner. And honestly, they'll probably never want to work with you again. Whereas, even if you don't know specific things that need to change, if you are thoughtful and careful and kind, they probably are someone that they're going to want to share their work with again in the future. Then you're someone who they may want to swap work with and help you with your work as well. Like, this is part of building a community, is building this kind of trust. And if you're able to help someone out, they'll help you out as well. Those are 7 things to keep in mind when you are critiquing somebody else's work. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought, if there are any other things that you think are important to keep in mind, if you've had any bad experiences with critique partners. I feel like we have all had that at some point in our lives. We've all run into somebody who thought they were maybe some kind of hotshot or maybe just weren't very nice and have said things that either weren't helpful or were just downright mean. And yeah, go ahead and vent it out if you want to down below. I've certainly experienced it, and I know you probably have as well if you've been working with critique partners at all. But that'll be all from me today. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like this type of video, and I will try to do more like this in the future. I also have a Patreon now. You can check out the link down below. I do offer critiques through my Patreon for poetry specifically, but also for short stories at higher level. And you can follow me on social media. I'm at K-Spivey on Twitter. My website is kspivey.wordpress.com. I post videos on Wednesdays. Sometimes I post some kind of bonus content on Saturdays that isn't like main channel type videos, but those are for fun. I hope you appreciate them as well, because there's no stopping me with putting out the videos that I enjoy putting out, so I've just moved those to a Saturday time slot to make things easier for everybody. I will speak to you again soon. Good luck to you. Good luck to all of us. Bye!